Hey Film Buffs, welcome back to Film Feature 43. Today we're going to do another 43 Facts video, but this time we're starting a series. We're stepping into the wizarding world of Harry Potter with the first movie in the franchise, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone, depending on what part of the world you live in. So without further ado, let's get into talking about the facts. J.K. Rowling originally turned down Warner Brothers, who wanted to produce the Harry Potter films, because they wanted to make them either animated or cram a lot of the books into one film because they were afraid the kids were going to age and make the movies look unrealistic. So what they ended up doing was compromising in filming all of the movies back to back to back to back to kind of cut out the age difference between what the kids were and what they were in the book. Because of this decision, they had to cast real-life kids to play the real-life kids in the movie. So whenever you see them doing schoolwork in the background and you think it's for Hogwarts, a lot of the time it wasn't. It was their real-life schoolwork for their real-life school so they wouldn't get behind. With all the setup that was needed and due to pesky child labor laws, they were only able to shoot about 4 hours a day with the kids. So that led to the production ballooning to about 9 to 11 months, and a lot of the choppy editing that you see in the film was due to them having multiple cameras rolling at one time so they could get the shots that they needed while they were filming with the limited time that they had. First book in the series was originally and is still in most of the world called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, but that was changed by the publisher in America because they didn't think that American audiences would know what a Philosopher's Stone was. So to keep the movies consistent with the books, a lot of scenes had to be shot multiple times, one saying Sorcerer's Stone and one saying Philosopher's Stone, so it could be distributed in its respective parts of the world with how it was distributed in the books.
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
J.K. regretted these changes when she was writing the books, but she didn't think that she had enough power and the publishers would publish it if she said no, so she went with them. Also changing her name, using a pen name J.K. instead of Joanne, because the American publishers didn't think that boys would buy a book written by a woman. Everything in the movie had to be ran through J.K. because she was only 4 books into the series and she knew the future, but the movie producers did not, so everything had to be run through her. The producers did actually offer her the role of Lily Potter in the Mirror of Erised scene, but she turned it down, stating that she was a writer, not an actor, so she would find a way to mess it up, so she didn't take that role. Having to run everything through JK did give her power to pick who she wanted in certain roles for the movie, so she handpicked Alan Rickman and Maggie Smith and Robbie Coltrane, and funny enough, she has stated that the character of Hagrid was actually slightly based on Robbie Coltrane, so it's funny to see that come full circle. Williams and Rosie O'Donnell wanted roles in Harry Potter, Hagrid and Molly Weasley respectively, but they did not get the roles because they were not British, and that was one of JK's stipulations, that all the actors had to be from Britain. This also stopped Liam Aiken, aka Klaus Baudelaire, from getting a role in the movie. He was originally offered the role of Harry Potter, but the offer was rescinded because he wasn't British. One decidedly non-British person who was on set was director Chris Columbus, who got the role because he showed up to the director's interview with a screenplay that he wrote for the movie to show his dedication to the movie. And he also was the person who picked Daniel Radcliffe to play Harry Potter when he saw him on a made-for-TV movie, David Copperfield. But the casting director said that Daniel Radcliffe's father would never let him do it because he was afraid that he'd fall behind in school, so they auditioned 5,000 boys for the role of Harry. But coincidentally, the screenwriter and one of the producers went to the theater where they sat next to the Radcliffes, and by the end of production, they had Daniel's father agreeing to let him star in the film. Another person who needed some convincing to take a role was Richard Harris, who played Dumbledore, who turned down the role 3 separate times, but accepted it on the 4th time when his granddaughter told him if he didn't take the role, she was never going to speak to him again. Harris did have some trouble on set learning his lines, so Daniel, in kind of a guise, asked Harris to help him run through lines, so Harris would have some practice with his own lines. The casting of Draco Malfoy and Ron Weasley kind of have a funny backstory as well. First off, Tom Felton, who played Draco Malfoy.
I must have been one of the only child out of 20,000 that had no idea what Harry Potter was, which made it very hard because the auditions, they were just asking all the children which scenes they were most looking forward to seeing from the book come to the film. Yeah. And it only got to about 2 away from me before I realised that I didn't have an answer for them. So the guy next to me said something about Gringotts and goblins. So I was just like, yeah, those Gringotts sound awesome. Yeah.
Chris Columbus saw through this, but thought it was funny, so he gave Tom Felton the role anyway, obviously.
The thing that actually helped me get the part of Draco.
Yeah.
Rupert Grint's audition for Ron wasn't in person, it was on tape, and he sent in a tape of himself dressed as his female acting coach, rapping about why Rupert should get the role of Ron, and he did, obviously. But Grint's antics didn't stop there. During one of the potion lesson scenes,
I was just doodling with my quill in the book. I drew this rather unpretty picture of Alan Rickman, and as I was drawing it, Alan Rickman was standing right behind me, and I was so scared.
The picture wasn't nice either. It was, I think I exaggerated a few of his features.
But Alan thought it was funny and got Rupert to sign it, and Alan actually held on to that until the day that he died.
I made him sign it, and I have it in my possession. And I'm very fond of it.
Grint and Radcliffe also changed Robbie Coltrane's phone language to Turkish, and nobody on set knew how to change it until they found out that the hair designer's father was Turkish, so they were able actually to get that fixed. And another thing that happened to Grint was he got injured while doing the chess scene, where he fell off his piece and hit his face onto a rock. That wasn't the only discomfort felt while filming. In the books, Harry has extremely green eyes, and to copy that for the movies, they had Daniel Radcliffe wearing green contacts, which he was allergic to, so they scrapped that idea. And another idea that they scrapped from the books was Hermione's supposed to have really large front buck teeth, and they had fake teeth for Emma Watson to wear, but she couldn't talk with them in, so they ended up throwing those away as well. One thing that was in this movie, but was scrapped for the sequels, was the floating candles were actually real in the first movie on a rig and wire system, but they would get so hot that they would fall, causing a fire hazard. So they replaced those with CGI candles in the rest of the films. Another thing that was real in this movie was the cauldron in Professor Quirrell's classroom. It was believed that it's a cauldron that's over 500 years old and was used to cook food for Queen Elizabeth. Speaking of food, the food in the Great Hall was actually real food that was switched out every 2 days or 2 hours if it was a vegetable, but with the heat from all the studio lights, it began to smell rather quickly, so even the 2 days switching out didn't stop it from smelling really bad. Some behind the scenes facts: the actors that play the Weasley twins actually don't have red hair in real life, so they had to dye their hair every 2 weeks, and so did Tom Felton, who played Draco Malfoy. He doesn't have blonde hair, but he had to bleach his hair, which damaged it for the rest of his life. Speaking of damaging for the rest of their lives, the actor who played Filch the caretaker, David Bradley, secluded himself in a cabin for over a month with no one except for his cat in order to get into character. In this movie, funny enough, Harry never purposely cast a spell throughout the entire film. One more thing in this movie that was broken was Hagrid's hut. They broke it down after production because it was built specifically for production and they didn't want fans coming to ransack it, but it will live on forever in the maps that J.K. wrote for the production of this movie of Hogwarts so they could get the continuity right, and those maps were used in all 8 films in the franchise. And speaking of being used in all 8 films, Privet Drive was originally a neighborhood, a real location, but whenever production went back to do some reshoots, the owners of the house got greedy, so production decided to make a completely new Privet Drive all on a set and use it for all 8 films. And during those scenes with the Dursleys, the owls that are present are supposed to be looking at the Dursleys, but they kept looking at the cameras, so to get them to look at Petunia, they put dead mice on the front of her apron. And one more production fact, the inscription around the Mirror of Erised says, "I show not your face, but your heart's desires," backwards. And one thing that did not make it in the movie was an original song written by Bruce Springsteen called "I'll Stand By You Always." That was in the first cut of the movie, but next to the Hogwarts aesthetic and the gravitas of John Williams' score, it really stood out and didn't sound as good, so it was cut from the final product. That's all 43 facts that I have about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer/Philosopher's Stone. If I missed any, let me know down in the comments, any that you found interesting. Like I said, I have all of the Harry Potter movies coming down the pike, so stay tuned for that. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.